what I'm calling the oligarch-fascist contradiction. The piece that I wrote about this was titled "A Capitalist Ethnonationalist Contradiction in the MAGA Coalition." This Elon has been on one tweeting about this in various hot takes that he has his impulsive Twitter finger. But this tweet here was kind of the money shot. The reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B, the visa program. Take a big step back and go fuck yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. What's hilarious about that is, like, right after that, he tweeted a plea, a request for everyone to use the platform in a way that says nice things. Pot calling the kettle black. I mean, like, what? Like, what? You ran off all the nice libs. The nice libs went to blue sky. So, anyway, so Elon clearly has strong personal feelings about H-1B, right? The visa program that is for talented foreigners to come over into America. And this nests nicely within the ideology of Silicon Valley, the ideology of techno-utopianism for all its warts. It emerged in the era of neoliberal globalization, when neoliberalism was hegemonic, right? And so Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon, the tech bro world, what's happening and what's getting all the news is that they are vocally confronting, in their own weird right-wing way, the ethno-nationalists within their own coalition. The MAGA coalition is a mix of ethno-nationalists and white supremacists on the one hand, but then owners of capital on the other, the oligarchs, the plutes, and the tech bros. H-1B is a visa. It's a talent visa. It's for, like, the 1%, like the highly skilled workers, right? But H-1B is part of a larger pro-immigration ideology that, like, Silicon Valley has had. I think they probably care more about being able to recruit the best tech talent or whatever from the rest of the world and poach that or hoard that. But in general, they've had this ideology that wants immigration because immigration is surplus labor, right? And so the capitalist class needs surplus labor in order to keep labor cheap and politically weak. If there's a labor shortage, wages go up because demand for labor would be increasing, right? In the previous era, capitalists dealt with the problem of needing to keep labor weak and to have surplus labor available by outsourcing cheap labor from the global south, from the third world, and then importing cheap labor, immigrants from abroad, right? And so that was the neoliberal formula. That is partially what's being challenged by, like, Steve Bannon and the MAGA coalition. Like, that configuration or framework of policies does not work if you're trying to create a white supremacist utopia, doing some sort of neo-feudal thing. So anyway, Elon is on one about specifically H-1B. And I noticed on Twitter that there's a bunch of, like, edge cases, like outlier individuals, extremely talented people, like ethnically Chinese people who started small AI companies, or who have hedge funds, and they happen to be foreigners, and they're making noise on Twitter and getting a lot of boosting and amplification from Elon. And what they're arguing is, like, look, I just raised a $20 million round. I have a PhD from MIT. I'm leading edge of AI and, like, semiconductor research and all this shit. And then they're saying, and I just got denied my H-1B for some weird reason, right? Which they attribute to a broken immigration system, right? You want to be able to attract talent from abroad, right? But what these foreigners are saying is like, look, you're going to have an exclusionary country, a racially pure country. I'm down for it. A racially pure oligarchy. But just let me in. Let me be on the inside at the country club. You know, like they want to get into the country club. They don't give a fuck about making the American immigration system more inclusive or more systematic. They just care about getting theirs, you know? And so the focus on H-1B is a little bit unfortunate because it's a 1%er immigration program, basically. But the larger point that I've been trying to make on this exact topic that like a lot of people who comment on this are missing is that there is and there will continue to be a larger structural contradiction between the fascists and the oligarchs. The capitalist class needs surplus labor. They always have. We need to be expendable. When Amazon warehouses, like we covered in the last live stream, when, you know, you got workers on strike right now, but those warehouses burn through employees so fast. The turnover is unbelievable. But that's part of surplus labor. If you have people on the outside that you can just hire in to replace the ones who burn out, then you can keep burning them out. You don't have to treat them better. You don't have to give them a fair deal. You don't have to give them a living wage. You don't have to give them better, you know, safety conditions, working conditions. You can just torch their fucking lives, and then when they're all incinerated, go get new bodies. That's the beauty of surplus labor for the capitalist class. It's always been like this. It's like this now, but those Amazon warehouses, just for example, they're going to need bodies. And if you close off immigration, you're closing off a major source of surplus labor. And so, however this specific feud gets resolved, like I have a feeling that, you know, H-1B is going to be preserved, sacrosanct, whatever. Like that's not going anywhere because the capitalists want it. But however that's resolved, there's going to remain this larger tension. And the tension is best represented in like the avatars of like Elon Musk on the one hand and like Steve Bannon on the other. And so if the ethno-nationalists get their way, a white supremacist society does exclude immigrants, talented or not, you know? And if the oligarchs get their way, the white supremacists are never going to get their way, right? And so that's the dance to watch. And like people talking about this as if it's just a political feud. You're hoping the MAGA coalition implodes, which of course, why not? Of course you want that, you know? But covering it that way is wrong, because this is actually like a huge contradiction that we should be attending to, you know? This comes back to my book and the explanation for Great Power Rivalry itself at the New Zealand Fabian Society. The talk was about the Sino-US rivalry stuff. There's one little excerpt from the talk that I gave, and it bears on everything we just talked about with Elon, ethno-nationalism, oligarchy.
And in the US and China in particular, this force is ethnically charged. It's ethno-nationalism, right? In both countries, nationalism has an exceptionalist quality. They both talk and sometimes act as if they are special, as if they have some kind of divine right? As if their behavior is exempt from the rules that everyone else plays by. Great power exceptionalism of this kind is nothing new, but it could coexist in a high-growth world. It wasn't a source of World War III in a high-growth world. We're not in a high-growth world anymore, right? Nope. So what we're left with is militarism and economic nationalism, and who benefits from that? Not lovers of democracy, not lovers of peace, and not workers.
My point in that talk and in that clip you just saw, rivalry itself in the geopolitical sense is downstream of a crisis of capital accumulation. In a world of high growth, antagonistic great powers, narcissistic great powers, they could coexist and get along and have a kind of détente. They could think in positive some ways, but in a world ever since the global financial crisis, we've been in a kind of secular stagnation. Growth has never recovered in most economies. Chinese growth has, of course, even though it used to be breakneck, it's been slowing down. It's the same in the US. Like, we're not growing. The rest of the world is not growing either. If great power competition is being fueled by ethnonationalism, but that ethnonationalism is being fueled by a crisis of capital accumulation, then the politics of ethnonationalism that we see within America, that is actually like secondary. It's not the driver, epiphenomenal. If I'm right about that, then the capitalist class, the Elon Musks, are the ones who are going to prevail. Ultimately, it's the bankers who prevail within the political coalition. The ethno-nationalists are kind of the useful idiots, right? That doesn't mean that they're not dangerous, that you don't take them seriously. It doesn't mean that they're not true believers. Like, I think Bannon really does eat his own dog food on this. Like, and that's a scary thing. The ethno-nationalist politics in America is authentic. It's genuinely felt. But in terms of like watching what happens with the political coalition and where all of this goes, if I'm right about great power competition, then that also probably applies to this situation about immigration. And that means ultimately we're going to end up probably having some sort of kayfabe immigration ban, where we do ban immigration in some like hardcore way for a short period of time or something like that. But ultimately, there's going to have to be a way to remedy this for the capitalist class. They need that surplus labor. You cannot just deny them it. And the thing that I fear, like I talked about in the last live stream, is that they're going to compensate for an immigration ban by granting Elon a concession on like H-1Bs, so we get the 1% people, but then compensating for the surplus labor that's being denied, getting that compensation from expanding the prison population, forcing large numbers of Americans to be surplus labor. Pro-Palestinian activists go and work at fucking prison as prison labor, the homelessness thing that I'm so freaked out about. To be homeless is a criminal act, justifies putting them in these labor camps for homelessness, internment camps that are used as free labor, basically. And if that's the way to compensate for an immigration ban, that's the darkest of the darkest shit you could ever imagine. Doesn't get worse than that.